Everyone, so when I was forming up and stamping the concrete walkway, I was pretty nervous. I worked a little bit too quickly and I didn't show you guys some key details and points of what to do, what not to do, and how to do them, or how not to do them. So I'm actually going to show you in this smaller little form that I have built now that I'm fairly confident in the stamping process, and you can take these skills and apply them to your walkway or whatever it is that you're stamping. I am going to stitch them on top of the concrete walkway, and then you can see real time, real size, how I use these effects in a larger scale, whether it's your walkway or your fire pit, whatever it is that you're stamping. So let's get to mixing some concrete. And now I can actually talk about the details with you guys. Once your form is set and ready to go, and if you have never built a concrete form before, you can actually check out my video on one of these sides or linked below. Where's my clip? And I show you guys exactly how I built our form for my first time. So once you have your concrete form all set and ready to go, you're going to start to mix your concrete. Or if you're smart, you're going to get it delivered. So let's mix some concrete. So once your form is set and ready to go, you can start mixing your concrete. Or like I said, you can be smart and get it delivered. I mean, I say this, but honestly, it wasn't that bad. There was 2 of us. It was a really good arm workout, and I would probably mix my own again as long as what we were pouring was not any larger than this current walkway. So here I'm mixing for the small sample form, but here is us mixing 2 wheelbarrows, 2 bags, sometimes 3 at a time for the walkway. If you are going to be mixing your bags yourself, definitely grab a hand for this. Your cement should be a pudding-like consistency. Not too thick, but you also don't want it to be too runny. At first, I was thrown off because the concrete we got has little tiny rocks in it. I thought I bought the wrong stuff, but later on, I found out it's actually better for structure. But it looked terrible at first. Again, it's my first time doing anything with concrete, so it really took me by surprise. But don't worry, I'm going to show you how to get it perfectly smooth. We also had wire mesh cut at the bottom of the form. You can't really see it here, but every few pours, we just lifted it up to about the halfway mark. You can use concrete chairs to hold it up, but this method works just as good. Wire mesh will help it from cracking in the future. So once we had a good amount of concrete in the form, a little over 2 feet in length, we started to knead it with a shovel around the edges, and this gets all of the air bubbles out to make sure that it gets right down to the ground. I will explain this a little bit further here in the sample pour that I'm going to show you guys. You'll see in this video, I'm actually taking the shovel and I'm going along the form, which is essentially the same motion. And that is to make sure that your form has concrete all the way down to the side. It's like the vibrate effect. To get the air bubbles out, you can actually see them coming to the surface. I didn't realize how much working time concrete actually has. That was pretty cool. That's something I learned. So you almost want the concrete to look like it was kind of bubbling over. And then you're going to take anything with a flat surface. We used a 2x4 because it was wider than my level, or the walkway was wider than my level. This is going to work great for here. Let's hope I don't get it in the garage. I muted this because the sound was absolutely horrific on camera. But when you put your straight edge on it, which can be a 2x4, a level, or anything really, anything that'll reach all the way across your form, however wide your form is, you want your form to be just slightly overfilled so that when you do put that straight edge across it, you almost push the concrete down with the straight edge. It'll actually bring the water and the smooth concrete up to the surface, and your rocks will sink just below the surface when you do it. You have to like shake it across the form almost in both directions. You'll get the hang of it. This is where I spent way too much time trying to get the concrete really smooth on my first section, because after all, I am stamping it, but that didn't really click in until the second and then the third and final pour. Again, I'm new here. We kept on going, and once we ran out of concrete, which I now see was a blessing in disguise, we put up an end piece. You don't have to do this. You can pour your whole walkway or slab in one pour. At the end of this project, we were planning on putting stress cuts in anyway, and that's where you cut down about 2 inches every 4 to 6 feet similar to what you see on a sidewalk. So if by chance the ground moves underneath it or ice and snow get in, and then it'll crack in the joint. So you won't see this big squiggly crack down the center of it. It's kind of like a controlled disaster. Your concrete is down, and now you are almost ready to stamp it. We were working on a pretty sunny day, and we still had almost 2 hours before the concrete set up and the water was dry enough for us to stamp it. You want it to look dry, but still be able to imprint it. I didn't realize concrete is actually very forgiving, and I'm going to show you here in the sample pour. So while I was waiting for it to dry, I went online and I found a really cool tip. A lot of professionals use what's called a concrete skin for the first layer, and what that does is it puts an uneven rock-like texture on. This is optional, but here's the trick. What I found online is that people are using a plastic bag to get the exact same effect. Just watch. How cool is that? And not to mention, a very big money saver. So now there's one more thing before you stamp it. I'm actually going to show you how to fix it if you stamp it too early. This is where I learned a lot, and I didn't realize how much working time concrete actually has. You could step in this, which our dog did, but we didn't get that on video, and we just had to do the same screeding effect over top of it. What I'm going to show you next is actually part of my walkway that I did in the middle section, and I stamped it way too soon. I was here by myself trying to be impressive, and I was like, I'm going to get it completely done, and learned a big lesson that I could have easily fixed it. It's fine. It's my first one. It's also a really great tool to show you guys what not to do and how to fix it and how to learn from what I did. So we're actually going to stamp this one prematurely. I'm showing you now why you need to make sure that your concrete doesn't have any sitting water on top. So you're going to throw your concrete release powder on it. Don't worry, I'll show you how to do that in detail in just 1 second. So quickly, at first it looks fine and you got to stamp it. The agent doesn't get pressed into the concrete properly because there's a layer of water that absorbs it and sits between the stamp and the fresh concrete. So in turn, the concrete will not get stamped properly. It's too mushy and it'll just end up looking like crap. You can see here that the water will actually come out of the sides of the stamp, and that is a very good indicator that you have stamped it too soon. But if you do this, it's okay. Don't panic and do what I did by going over it again and again, thinking that maybe it was just a bad stamp job. The stamp will fix it. No, it won't. Just wait. This is how it will dry compared to the second section here on the bottom that I let set up until I almost questioned if it was a bit too late. You see the difference? I know, right? It's okay. It's my job to let you learn from me, both good and bad. This is why I really appreciate the comments, the likes, and the subscribes. So if you think you have stamped it too early, just use the water that's still sitting there in your favor and add a little bit more if you have to. Trowel it over and then let it set up again. 20 minutes later, and this is what it should look like. It's almost dry. Well, it looks almost dry. It's not. It's very workable, but there's clearly no water on top. So now I'm going to use the plastic bag trick to get that texture on, and then I'm going to flick the release powder on. So here I am doing it in real time on my walkway. I'm rolling around the bucket at first because that's what I read you're supposed to do. The concrete release powder can actually settle and become kind of clumpy, so shake it around, fluff it up a bit. Professionals will have a fancy brush that you dip in, get a lot on, and then flick it with your wrist across the top of the walkway. I live almost an hour away from any store that's going to supply a brush like this, so I improvised like I do in a lot of cases, and someone's probably going to come at me in the comments. That's totally fine, but I used the head of my broom and it worked just fine. Everywhere I read and watched said you needed 3 or more stamps. Yeah, you probably do. You'll get much more of a variance in the pattern. You have more than one, but even the Amazon version of the stamp was $200. I wasn't trying this as a first-time DIY and going to drop $800 or more on stamps. One worked just fine. I am, however, planning our fire pit pour, so I'm going to be getting a few more stamps to go with this one now that I feel much more confident in what I'm doing. If you're using more than one stamp, you'll take your second one and butt it up to the first stamp, your third to your second, and continue until you're out of stamps, and then remove the first one and keep on going. For me, I just had one to remove, so then I had to carefully make sure I placed it in the same line as the first time I stamped it. This is so that you don't know where one part of your stamp ended and where the other one began. Just make sure you're careful. When you're all done stamping it, it'll be dry to the touch in just a few hours. You can walk on it in 24, but I didn't actually take the forms off until about the 48-hour mark. At the 24-hour mark, though, you are able to hose the powder off and reveal your finished concrete. The concrete is still considered green for the first few days. All that means is that it's just soft around the edges and in the center, so it's more prone to chipping and breaking off if something heavy was to hit it or fall on it. But when I was able to take that form off and finish my garden, I was so excited. I am so in love with this and how it turned out. Are there imperfections? Absolutely, there are many. I've learned so much, but for never working with concrete before, I am so very proud of this project. And I really just hope that I can show you guys, if you put your mind to something, you can do it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Check out my other videos, and thank you so much for watching.